but killing a pig is really out of limits. So, okay, we'll take that for next time. We're going to let these credits roll, and then we'll throw to a card flip. What we're going to do is we're going to bring out the two brilliant minds behind this film. As I said at the top, they've collaborated and worked together on such incredible shows as Watchmen and Leftovers, and now The Hunt. Ladies and gentlemen, two of the greatest writers we've had today, Nick Hughes and Damon Lindelof.
I just gave that guy coronavirus. High five. Okay, I'm clear.
I told you not to touch anybody. Okay, so I have to ask a question. Did you guys have as much fun writing this thing as we did watching it? Because the film is a blast. I described it coming out as it's a stick of dynamite, and it really is, because it just explodes all over the screen. So how was this process in putting this together?
Thanks for saying that. And we got here about half an hour ago, and we're sort of standing there over the edge. We haven't really had the experience of watching the movie play. And you know, this whole adventure started by Nick and I sort of cracking each other up, and so somewhere along the way things got incredibly serious. And I just have to say, it was literally like music to our ears just to watch an audience react to it. So thank you guys so much for, you know, coming out tonight. Obviously, it's a big deal, given like the state of play, to just come to a theater and enjoy a movie, and we're profoundly appreciative for you guys watching. And I'll just say that, you know, that we did have a lot of fun writing the movie and a lot of fun making the movie, and the idea that it was supposed to be a satire, it was supposed to be taken, it was so over the top and ridiculous and absurd, was always kind of at the top of mind. I do think now that people are getting the opportunity to see the movie, the only negative thing that we're starting to hear is people are a little disappointed that it's not more controversial. But I think that for a movie with such a high death toll, it's kind of harmless.
Yeah, and you set that tone right from the beginning. As soon as they get to the place, the crate, I mean, obviously there's a scene in the plane, but when they get to the crate, there's the blonde-haired woman, and they start shooting. She's like, oh, they almost hit me. And then the next thing you know is her head explodes across the screen, which a round of applause this audience gave. So you're in safe hands. Was the intent always to make it as insane as possible, to point out the insanity that we're dealing with today? Like, what was the thought process?
I think it was really just like trying to outdo each other, sitting across from each other at a table, and just trying to sort of be more of a psycho than Damon, in my case. Like, just try to cross the line in terms of just, that's really messed up, and like I'm a little disturbed to be friends with you. Like, genuinely, I mean, the politics stuff came later, I think, and it was a texture that was obviously hugely important to it, but it really just started out like us trying to surprise each other.
There was a quote that I read from Craig Sobel, the director, and it was in an interview, and they said, oh, is this film anti-one-sided? And he said, this film is anti-everybody. Was that the intent as you were writing?
It's pro-Crystal, for sure.
It's definitely pro-Crystal, yeah.
Very pro-Crystal.
Yeah, we wanted the movie to be as you know, as fair and balanced as possible. We obviously, I think that this, you know, the last thing that we ever wanted to do was make a message movie or wag our fingers or have people say, like, what do you think the moral of that movie was? I think if anything, this movie trolls the idea of a moral. That, you know, Crystal tells the story about the tortoise and the hare, and she basically says, like, and here's what would actually happen at the end of that story. And I think that that's more true to form, you know, in terms of the way that we experience each other. And fundamentally, we live in this bubble. If there's one thing about this idea of, like, we're all on different sides, is that, you know, I identify as a coastal elite. And so it was much easier for me to make fun of myself and the people that I spend time with than it is for the people that I don't. And so we tried to weight the movie accordingly. And again, you know, I have heard from some of my friends who have seen the movie, like, you went a little bit hard on us. That made me feel like, okay, we probably got it right then.
I think so. The line that got a real raw, the older couple, when they're in the gas station and they're going back and forth, and they go, yeah, we're the fucking worst. And it's like, it's so true. What was, when you submitted the script on this, did you always think about Jason for this? Taking it, so Jason Blum, it's produced by Blumhouse Pictures, Productions, I should say. Did you think about Jason first? Was knowing his sensibilities within the genre space?
Yeah, I mean, I really think Damon and I were in the editing room, I think, at lunch on the second to last Leftovers episode, which we both wrote. And I asked him sort of what he might be interested in doing next, and he's like, I always love to just write a Blumhouse movie. You know, we could write it in like 3 weeks. So we'll connect. Well, that's what it's like to be Damon Lindelof. That's a little insight into his experience going through the world.
It's certainly not as pleasant as that, trust me. But it took a little bit longer than 3 weeks. But
a year.
You know, we love Jason Blum movies, and I think that particularly with The Purge and then with Get Out, the idea that you could you could do some sort of satire, social commentary inside like a great genre movie where, you know, there is this part of us, all humans, that loves to watch other humans get killed. Like, it goes back to the Gladiator days. And the great thing about a movie is it's all pretend. Like
the first time you play Grand Theft Auto, it's just so unbelievable. It's just, you just want to run over every single person on the street with your car. First get another car and then run over everyone else.
On TV, when we kill off a character, it's this incredibly deliberate process, and there's like all these consequences, and you have to talk about, you know, what the stakes are, and then the next episode is everybody is mourning them, and like, we're just like, it would just be fun to make a movie where you're just killing people the entire time, and you don't have to do any of that.
Did this allow you just to let rip then? Because I mean, like, I think about, you talk about something like Death, right? I think about something like Leftovers, which is an incredible, impeccably crafted, beautifully written, but you mourn everything in that. Like, it weighs on you. This is the complete opposite. Was writing this in some part of reaction to that? Was it letting go? Was there some catharsis in you? Or is it just like, it's time to just go hog wild?
Well, I have yet to...
Such a good question.
Yeah, I have yet to come across a single person who would describe the experience of watching The Leftovers as fun or escapist. And there was definitely a part of us that was feeling that need. But I also think, like, these movies, Jason's movies, or the genre movies that I grew up on, they are not, you know, they are not easy to do. It's not this idea of like, oh, like, this is hard and this is easy. I actually think that while Nick and I started having conversations about what would eventually be this movie, it did take a long time to sort of figure it out, and you kind of realize when you're trying to reverse engineer a movie like this, you know, how tricky it is to get it right. And I think that also that the idea of trying to kind of bring in, you know, some elements of comedy or the thriller aspect, like this idea of needing to choose a lane. These are genre elements that we weren't necessarily as comfortable with working on The Leftovers. The absurd space, we got comfortable with Craig doing these international assassin episodes of The Leftovers, and that's why he felt like he was the perfect fit for a movie like this.
Yeah, it's it's interesting you talk about genre, because I think about like key movies in particular, things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Toby Bill on the back of, that was a reaction for him to Vietnam. You have Romero who's making Dawn of the Dead, so these are social commentaries. This is in a lineage, and then as you come forward, a couple of weeks ago we just screened The Invisible Man, which is a pretty potent statement on domestic violence, and then thinking about Blum, Get Out, the statement that film's making, this sits within that world. Were you like digging into those types of materials as you were researching, and then just kind of like formulating ideas for this?
Well, I mean, I remember reading this thing once that I loved, and I forget who it was. I think it was like Michael Mann. He was just like, I figure out the theme when I'm doing press. And he was kind of being flippant, I thought, at the time. But then when we've been talking about this movie a little bit, the idea that horror movies reflect the fears of our time, like, it had never occurred to me to apply that to The Hunt until, the last week. But I was like, oh yeah, I think I am a little scared that, like, if there's not a world war for 50 or 60 years, we're all just going to kill each other. Like, that's where we're headed. So I think, like, weirdly, like, the thematic thing sort of was there all along, and I didn't even quite fully realize it myself.
What is the theme of Miami Vice, though?
High style, that's what the theme is. It's beautiful. So I want to read, I want to quote someone, and he can remain nameless for now, but he tweeted, that this film was made in order to inflame and cause chaos. These are the real racists. That came from, that guy that loves to tweet. What happened? What happened when you learn about this? Where were you? Damon, you're in the Bahamas, right? Didn't your son grab you or something?
Yeah. So we have been working on Watchmen for a year and a half, and my son. Can
we have a round of applause for Watchmen?
We were working on the show forever, and when you're in deep on particularly the first season of a television show, it's very immersive, and so I was just away from my family a lot, and sort of like my son had a 4 days off from school coming up a couple months down the road, and I was like, we'll go wherever you want. I'm gonna, we'll be in post. I'll slip out of the editing room, and we'll go wherever you want. And then, like, a commercial for Atlantis, this audience of 500 people was ultimately going to determine the Hunt's fate. And so we screened it on a Tuesday night. It tested, pretty well. And then afterwards, they had a focus group of everybody who saw it, and they asked them, do you think it was appropriate for us to show the movie? And they seemed kind of befuddled and offended by the question. They were like, it's a movie. Like, what does this have to do with what happened there? No. And so we were like, cool. And the very next morning, I was on a plane off to Atlantis. And so our rule was we weren't going to have phones. We're going to sort of detach from the real world. I told my wife that I would call her every night to say goodnight, but otherwise we were just going to go on crazy water slides all day. And so that's what we did the first day. I called my wife, said goodnight. Second day we're doing that, and my son says, can I please check my phone? I'm in a text thread, my friends are, I'm having FOMO, and I'm hanging up our wet bathing suits in the bathroom. And he comes in and he says, hey, the president just tweeted about your movie. And I said, ha ha. And he goes, no, Dad, really? And that was my first understanding. I sort of missed the entire run-up to it. And I was confused at, being called the real racists. I didn't know what racism had to do with anything, and then we called Jason, and essentially he sort of filled us in on what I had missed. It was delightful.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, he buddied me.
Yeah.
Buddy. Not good.
And then Nick, where were you? Because you weren't shirtless in the Bahamas, I assume. You're a little close to home.
I was actually in London working on something and in production, and so which was sort of a blessing because you're just so tired at the end of the week and just trying to put one foot in front of the other that I of course was upset and knew what was happening, but it was sort of I didn't have the full emotional capacity to cry about it for several months later. But yeah, it was crazy because genuinely I feel like I set out at least to write something that everyone would like, which is not coming from a place of a goodness in my heart. It's a deep insecurity, but it's many recesses that I wasn't picked from many teams. But we wanted people to we wanted everyone to enjoy it. We didn't want to alienate any single audience member or any certain person with any certain view. So, hopefully, now that people who felt that way back then who hadn't seen it. Maybe we'll see it now and feel differently.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you want to give people everywhere and anybody the respect that they want. It's like you should decide for yourself. It shouldn't be a politician. It shouldn't be a censorship board. Like, let the people determine. There's always the option they can either switch off, or in this case, they don't have to buy a ticket when they go in. So, giving people that freedom. It's great that Universal is releasing this film. And it's great that we were able to see it and screen it here today. So this has got to be a kind of surreal experience, right? Actually, when Universal announced that the film was coming out, was there a sense of relief, or was there a little bit concern? It was like, oh no, Donald's going to come after us again. What was that?
I think that I'm not exaggerating when I say, independent of how the movie is received or what box office it does, it's a miracle that it's coming out. Like, we really, when we heard that the movie was canceled, that's a very specific word, canceled. It's not delayed, it's not postponed. So there was a real sense of finality to it. And we all understood why that decision was made, when it was made. And so when we got the call sort of towards the end of January from Jason, buddy, I got good news and bad news. Like, the fact that the movie was back on again was sort of like, oh wow. And so the fact that we're sitting here in an actual movie theater with an audience that has seen this thing
and loved it.
Thank you guys. There's no part of me that feels like what happened was a good thing. Like, obviously, given access to some sort of time machine, I would do everything that I could to prevent the chain of events that sort of led us here. But at the same time, now that we are here, like, the level of like bona fide gratitude, never take for granted the fact that a movie that you make is going to be released and people are going to get to see it. And this experience, again, of like coming into a movie theater and watching something together, this is the ultimate uniter. Like, this is the thing that we all do together. Netflix is great. Binge watching television shows is great, but nothing beats this experience of coming all together and seeing something. And so the fact that The Hunt has made it to you guys is a big deal for us.
And truthfully, that's why we do this, right? We do this as a means of bringing people together for a communal experience. There's nothing like 600 people screaming, yelling, clapping, loving "Oh Well the Pig." Like that's the way that this film should be viewed. Throw it to the audience.
Please.
Yeah, gentleman right there. And let's talk about The Hunt. These guys have got incredible careers, but let's talk about this. Yeah.
My question for you two is, what's your advice for students in college who are studying screenwriting?
So, question to the audience: what is your advice for students who are studying screenwriting?
I'm so old I don't even remember college. So Nick, you should probably take this one. I'd say very, very quickly, in all seriousness, like, read lots of screenplays. That's like, it's a different experience than watching a movie that you love. Is to actually just read lots of scripts, bad ones too. You can learn just as much from a bad script as you can from a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add to that I think that writing something, finishing it, writing something else, finishing it, writing something else is a much better way to improve as a writer than trying to perfect one thing. Don't let one thing linger and take up all your writing time and your mind space. Like, finish it, do something else, come back to it if you want to, but like, only through sort of iterating and doing different projects, I think, will you sort of start to see that rapid improvement. And you will get better. Like, it's really like, everyone's first batch scripts suck. So.
The other thing you got to do is you've got to write lines like "Let go, you fucking snowflake." Whose was that, Michael?
Damon.
Yeah. Did you, as you were writing, were you literally just coming up with zingers and you're like, "Oh, I got to find a place to put that in"?
We did, like, we were like, we wanted to be cognitive of what people's last words were. So the idea that Athena's last word would be whoops,
Yeah.
or that character's last, what did we end up naming her? The woman who dies on the spikes?
That's sexy.
Yeah.
Because her shirt says "that's sexy," and when the sexy part gets blown off, and it just says "dead" at the end.
That's a screenwriting tip, my friend. Next question, get them right here. Okay, question for the audience here. So the gentleman asked, since the movie was postponed, was anything changed between the cut you were working with before and what we saw on the screen tonight?
We did not change any of the movie. We did have a very surreal conversation where the scene where Athena gets fired and she's saying it was a joke, and we were saying, are people going to believe that we actually shot the scene before? Like we started saying these same things ourselves. It had like sort of a meta-ness, so we did consider, editing some of that stuff down. But at that point, we were like, we'd be fools to have to change the movie in any material way whatsoever. So it wasn't sound mixed, but everything else was finished.
Yeah, it would be disingenuous at this point to change the film. Like it is what it is, and you don't want to disassemble any of the potency that you've got in there. So
it's probably not too late for us to save Orwell the pig. We've got 48 hours. We could just shoot like a Marvel movie, like post-credit scene where the pigs like twitches a little bit. I think that would probably appease you sick fucks.
To be fair, Craig, so our director, did tell me many, many times, you can't kill the pig. They're gonna hate that when you kill the pig. And I was like, but it's the villains killing the pig, so you're gonna hate the villains, which is a good thing. He's like, you still can't kill it. And I was like, what if one of them is even upset about it? And he was like, finally, I convinced him, but I guess I was very wrong.
listen to Zoe, listen to gentleman right there in the cap. Yeah.
You said Jason Blum said I have good news and bad news. What was the bad news?
Oh, Jason Blum called you good news and bad news.
Oh yeah.
To let you know that the film's coming back. What was the bad news?
He asked me what did I want first, and I said I wanted the good news.
Well, I think you said, like, just tell me. And he was like, no, you have to decide. But
I said I want the good news, and he said I think they're gonna date the movie on March 13th. And I said, what's the bad news? He goes, it's a Friday. I think he was secretly delighted by it.
He loves Friday the 13th. He will date his films like
Loves it.
he loves it. The Blum. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
First of all, I can't tell you how pissed I was when I heard this movie was canceled and how thrilled I
Thank you so much.
was. The question is, back when all the hysteria was going on, there was actually an article about this type of a story, and that there's a history of a movie and a short story from like 100 years ago about kind of that theme. Were you aware of those? Did that help to inform you or anything like that?
So the question is about going all the way back. Because in the 1920s, Most Dangerous Game was originating book, and there was a film in the 30s. There's also the Jean-Claude Van Damme epic Hard Target. Did any of that work influence this, inspire you?
We definitely talked about Most Dangerous Game as shorthand. I think it's sort of like, it's legendary in terms of the movie or the story itself becomes the convention of the genre. So when you say like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you're just talking about any kind of story where the people that you love most have been inhabited by some sentient intelligence that is rapidly multiplying, etc. So we shorthanded Most Dangerous Game as any situation where humans were hunting other humans, but we wanted to make sure that the forced sport part, that's Most Dangerous Game, which is hunting other human beings for sport. We were like, the first thing that we have to game for sport is not a good character motivation. So what if humans are hunting human beings for revenge? And what would they be wanting to get revenge for? Oh, what else? Internet trolling. I mean, right. Not like that's ever happened to me, but that was the sort of genesis. So
Rules of the Game also was a movie that we talked about a lot. Great movie. Just to sound pretentious for a second. Black and white. Very intellectual film. No, but that movie, there's a great sort of thing in that movie that I just love every time I see it, which is just like they have sort of all these sort of palace intrigue, like relationship-based problems with different couples and people cheating on each other. And like this one guy just gets shot, and then they're sort of like, oh well, I guess that just sort of solves everything. And they're like, it's so French. They're just like, oh great, wonderful. All right, well we'll see you next weekend.
Is that Renoir?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, yeah.
So internally, when Trump sent out the tweet, he sent out a tweet about stuff all the time, and they don't stop tweeting things. So what they just said, because he tweeted that, Universal decided not to release the movie, or how did that play out?
It was more at the exact same time.
Oh, I thought you were just going to repeat
The
the
film was specifically based around the tweet. Obviously, Donald tweets all the time, so
Nothing would get released.
What our understanding, and again, I sort of I experienced this all at once because I wasn't here as it was developing, but over the course of that week, the news cycle was just continuing to churn. This movie is about liberal elites hunting deplorables for sport. It was made by and so the messaging got completely and totally out of control. So I think conversations were already well underway about whether or not the movie should be released. And then when the president tweeted about the movie, that was that happened to coincide with the ultimate decision. And but I'm not entirely sure it was a causative factor. It certainly didn't help.
But
Yeah.
the key thing at that time, which Damon talked about before, within that window there were shootings in El Paso, and then
Dayton.
and then Dayton, Ohio, which the gravity of that is obviously huge. As you say, that man, there is a constant stream of.
Yeah, because they've done that before. They would delay a movie after the shooting. They would delay something for like a month or something. They would release it. They would not put it on the schedule for like a year or whatever.
But our understanding is, and I'm not entirely sure this is accurate, so please fact check me, is that the president has only tweeted about 2 movies since he's been in office. Ours is one, and the other is Parasite, which won Best Picture. The guy's clearly onto something.
Yeah, right here. As you were writing the movie, were there any real life people, either within your circles or kind of larger than life characters out there that formed your character?
Interestingly enough, you mentioned Don. And the reason that he was called Don is originally we wanted Don Johnson to do it. But then we cast him in Watchmen. And so back to Miami Vice. It's all about Miami Vice. But then we ended up with Wayne Duvall, who is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
He's really amazing.
my college girlfriend's mom was named Liberty, and she was lovely, but very Liberty-ish. And she once told me when I had a Coke, she said that's poison. That's poison. I don't know how happy she's gonna be. I don't know if she knows about this, but we'll see what happens.
She's actually sat at the back right there, and she's right now. So
Good to see you.
Gentleman right there in the middle. Yeah, great, honey. We'll take one more after this.
How did you get Hillary Swank involved in this?
Hillary Swank. Can we actually lift that up a little bit? So the question was, how did you get Hillary Swank involved? Well, it's awesome. Why wouldn't she? But the rest of the cast as well. In particular, Betty, who plays Crystal.
Betty Gilpin, right?
And the two of them together is so awesome, and it's just such an immense battle between the two of them. What was it? Because you were a producer on the film as well. So how involved were you with the casting? And then this gentleman's question, Hillary's involvement, and then
we were both producers on the movie, as is Craig, and Betty actually, Craig had worked with her on an episode of American Gods, and I was a huge fan of Globe, and he was like, what about Betty Gilpin? And we were like, yeah, she's awesome. Will she read? And then she came in, and Craig emailed Nick and I with a link. It was basically found her, and we just watched it, and it was the scene in the gas station when
Pfizer smokes.
Yes, And
It's just like that's the movie.
yeah, she did like a little kind of like dance after she blows away Ma and Pa, and
Oh my god, I got chills when she's fucked up.
yeah, and it was love at first sight, and so then it was about casting the right Athena, and a big part of it was like we needed someone who had the physicality to really go toe to toe with Betty, who is you know, obviously has all this fight and choreography training on Glow, but the idea of like we need someone who can really fight, and preferably someone who's won at least 2 Oscars. that would be our preference.
It was her on Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah,
and that was it.
And it was sort of like, you know, wow, wouldn't Hilary Swank be awesome? But like, and Blum was like, oh, buddy, yeah, I know, like, I got it the first one. I'm at Sundance right now. I'm gonna find her. I'm gonna screen her right now. And they had some kind of relationship, and
Produce P.S. I Love You.
yes,
Classic Blumhouse.
That is a horror.
that like Tooth Fairy,
Tooth
so
Fairy,
far
yes.
out of the Venn diagram, but also Jason. But yeah, that's how it happened. And Hillary just came ready to play, and this.
Did she read it all, or you were like, no?
Oh no, we just. I mean, she knows how to read.
Yeah.
But we offered her the movie, and then we sent her the script, and then we had to have a conversation, you know, because she was sort of like, is this supposed to be funny? I just want to make sure that you guys, because I thought it was funny, but if you guys are trying to be super serious, I'm not sure I'm right for this. And we're like, no, we're trying to be funny. And so she said yes.
It's amazing how hard it plays as a comedy as well. I mean, like all throughout, there are these beats and there are lines that just, like they ripped up the roof in this place, which is, I mean, I think for both of you, I get back to the comment I made earlier, like it kind of allows you to let loose because you've got humor in your work, right? But this, like really rips.
Thanks again for saying that. And I think like the humor in this movie is all about a certain level of absurdity. And this is why what happened, which is if you try to explain this movie to someone, if you're like, oh, get this, like this woman comes running up to Justin Hartley, and then there's a gunshot, and then she's like, that almost hit me, and then she gets shot in the face, and her head explodes, and it's delightful. People look at you like you're sick, and I think this is where, you know, Craig as a director, but also like decisions as to, you know, how to costume Emma. Or the music is playing kind of Thriller, but a little bit broad, you know, not quite like, you know, all these decisions that are being made are slightly heightened, and that's where, again, to go back to when we first worked with Craig on International Assassin, which is like when you explain those episodes to people in terms of what's happening in them, you sound like a crazy person, but somehow there's this weird comedic kind of silliness to it that plays.
Yeah, he's taken such an interesting curve. Like I think back to like Zed for Zachariah and the Compliance.
Yeah, he's one of the co-creators of Homestar Runner.
Yeah.
Like people forget that about Craig Zobel, who like made Compliance, you know. But yeah, he's a funny guy.
That's awesome. All right, last question. Make it incredible. Who's going to? Is there about me? Yeah. Okay. All right. I apologize. It's blinding.
It was a very entertaining experience, and I just have a simple question. Who came up with the quizzing art blade as being the final? My brother's a chef.
Oh.
Well, his brother's a chef. Who came up with the quiz line?
I can, yeah. I mean, well, there a lot of that. By the way, like we kind of just stiffed Craig and the stunt coordinators in this movie because we just wrote this one-page thing that was like, this is the craziest fight ever. It's like John Wick in a Nancy Meyers movie. Like, so many things will happen. There will be blowtorches. There will be grilled cheeses thrown at each other. Like, it's gonna be great. Trust us. Like, they had to actually do it.
The Cuisinart blade, though, that was specifically scripted because, you know, again, to be super pretentious about it, we love the idea of a double-edged sword, if you will. You know, And it's like the idea of like, I got you, and now I'm literally going to be the murder weapon that gets you back. And so that one was for the film students.
That's you're right with that.
Yes.
So that's a great way to end. That's a perfect question. Thank you, Val.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you for writing this film. Thank you for everything you've done today. I hope you continue to make a hell of a lot more because we need you. We need everything that you've got for the next 40, 50 years. Congratulations on this. And I think I speak for everyone. We're really happy that this film is going to play in theaters.
And if I can just ask a favor of you guys, tell whoever you want, whatever you want. If you love the movie, great. If you didn't love the movie, great too. But if you can just get the word out that the movie is safe. Like, I think, no, it is like the last thing that anybody wants to do for a movie that I think is as escapist and as fun as this is people are sort of like, oh, all the controversy, blah, blah, blah. But if you can just, if you can just say, no, it's cool, we would deeply appreciate it. So
And
thank you.
tag real Donald Trump when you post this.
I did not say